Guys, it's Josh with Jet Boat Mayhem. So I'm here doing a review of the Grizzly G0769. So it's a lathe mill combo that I bought last year and I've loved it. It's super great. I'm gonna show you the best thing you possibly could do to upgrade this and make it more usable. So what I first did was mount it to this awesome table. I had a friend of mine weld this thing up. It's super heavy, it's 1/4 inch steel. Really great, and it really holds it well. You know, convenient and everything. I originally, because the mill was not rigid enough, I had it attached to here at the top, and that really helped out with being, you know, being rigid. But what I ended up realizing is that this thing is such a pain because what we've got, I mean, obviously, like, I like it. It's a great lathe, but for milling machine purposes, you've got to disconnect and you've got to take this whole tool post apart and then mount a milling vise on it, okay? And then the problem is when you go ahead and you take off the tool post and you mount a milling vise, it's mounted on this little 3-inch wide, you know, cross slide, which is fine for the lathe, that's appropriately sized, but you get a pivot point on the mill because it's so narrow. I mounted a big plate on here, and then when I mounted that plate and my mill vise, I ended up with not a lot of travel because I was hitting the lathe on this side, hitting stuff on this side. It was just no good. So what I did was I came up with a solution for this whole thing and decided that I was going to separate the two. Let me show you what I mean. So what we've got is, you know, it's connected this way, and we basically have, and sorry for all the clutter and everything, it's a last minute video, but I figured there'd be people out here who had bought this, you know, Grizzly G0769. They had bought this thing and wanted to do what I'm doing, so I'm going to show you what that is. So you can see it connects right back here, the mill does, and sits on this little tiny post, which is just a, you know, it's okay, but it's not very good design. I mean, it's you know, it's fine, but it's just not very usable because every time you want to, you know, turn something in the mill, you've got to take this tool post off, and there's little T slots, or there's a little, you know, circle thing in here that this bolts to that is really hard to get your bolts back into. It's you know, you got to stick an Allen wrench in there and like keep it up, and it's just horrible. So you don't ever want to take this thing off if you can not do it. So I came up with the solution that I'm really excited about, and I'm going to show you what that is. How to make this thing a you know, far more usable, way more convenient, you know, and you know, just great. So what I did was I ordered, this is a 3-foot table. This is a table built to fit this tray that it comes with, okay? And I built it, you know, this whole thing, the table was built for this. What I realized was that, you know, you've got one control going to the mill, and then you've obviously got the control, and the way you switch them is through this switch here. You switch it here, you're on the mill, switch it here, you're on the lathe. So I can't take this mill head off because all the electronics are shared, and so I was like, what can I do to make this better? So what I've done is I'm going to take them apart. I'm going to take the two apart. I'm going to leave the lathe as it sits because this really is a lathe with a mill piggybacked onto it. I'm going to take the mill off and I'm going to move it. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So I ordered this table from the same guy who built this table. Okay, this table is a it's 5 feet instead of 3 feet. The lathe is going to come to about here. Okay, and then I'm going to take the mill head off and I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to build a standalone milling table or milling machine that goes together with, basically, that shares the controls of the lathe but is set up fully on its own right here. And I'm gonna so I'm gonna get this moved over here, and then you know, it'll be a little easier to see, and I'll explain to you how I'm gonna do this whole thing. So as you can see, this is much better. Let's go back a little bit. So what we've got now is you know, I've got my lathe set up, and then over here I'm going to be able to set up my milling machine. So what I'm going to do here, and I'll flip it around so I can see. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this before I disconnect the mill so that, you know, I can basically, you know, still use it and stuff like that. So the mill has a you know, you can cant the head of it, so you can adjust for whether it's mounted you know, things are like this. You can adjust so that it will, you know, it'll be right. It'll track straight and everything will be, you know, flat and that kind of stuff. What you can't adjust for is the front and back. So what I can do is I can, you know, slightly adjust, you know, this, like the you know, the vise. Maybe I can shim the vise or something. But but I know that this is perfectly flat here. So I know that where that bolts, I'm thinking this is a separate piece. I'm pretty sure that's a separate piece. We'll find out, I guess. Find out if any of this is even going to work. Oh my goodness. I'm just kidding. It's going to work. So, because those bolts wouldn't be there except for that is, you know, this, I'm sure this whole thing is not all one piece. I'm sure it's just powder coated as one piece, so it looks like that. So what we've got here is we're going to, you know, it's flat that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to order a piece of steel, and this piece of steel is going to be a big enough footprint to sit here. It'll probably be like 18 inches by 18 inches or something, just because that'll be a nice, you know, even thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt that piece of steel down to this, because this is not perfectly flat. So the guy I, you know, ordered it from did a great job. You know, I'm not saying anything, but you can see there's a little bit of a dip here, okay? So if I was to mount the mill on this piece and mount the vise on this piece, they would lean towards each other and I would not get straight cuts and things would be off precision wise. So I'm going to order a 1/2 inch thick piece of 18 by 18 steel. That is because I think 1/2 inch is going to give me the you know, this is 1/2 inch, and I think 1/2 inch is going to give me the rigidity I need, and it's going to be ground on both sides to be flat. So what that means is they're gonna make it flat for me, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld that to this table. So so that piece of steel will be ground flat both sides, so it'll be like, you know, exactly what I need. And then I'm going to be able to mount the milling machine on this side over here. I'm going to mount the vise on this side, and those two will be on the same plane. So I won't have any problems I'll have less problems, I should say. I expect to still have some problems, but I don't expect to have lots and lots of problems, you know, like I would if I was, you know, if I was just to mount it, you know, to right here. So what we've got is if I put a piece of steel here that's ground, and you can get this from steel manufacturers, like not steel manufacturers, but like metal supply, you know, companies. Like usually they're industrial, but they'll, you know, lots of them serve residential, you know, just hobbyists and stuff like that. So you can order a piece of this, and I expect it'll be, you know, maybe $100 or something, because of the grinding and because of the precision. But that piece is going to give me a true flat, so it'll be you know, it'll be exactly what I need. So then when that goes on here, now I start with a fresh surface that's perfectly flat, and then I'll go from there and build on that. So you kind of have to start sometimes, you know, when you're talking about this kind of thing with precision stuff like lathes and mills, you have to start with a flat, you know, base. And if you build on an unflat, you know, if it's got, you know, if it like I showed on this piece here, you know, these pieces I know lean in towards each other. So the easiest way to do it is just to get a piece to build on top of that is perfectly flat. So I'll weld that piece to this, and we'll be, you know, and I'll obviously cover up my lathe and everything so nothing gets over there, but I'll weld it to this, and then we will be off to the races for the mill. So that's the best thing that I can think of to fix this, because then I'll be able to set up, and I guess, you know, let me show you what I'm actually going to be mounting here to give you a little idea. Okay, so this is my cross slide that I bought. It's very heavy duty. I want to show you. This is like an inch thick, if not more than an inch. It looks like maybe 1.25 inches. And then we've got our really heavy, you know, T-slots here. So this will accept a milling vise, a lot like this one down here. So now we've got we're going to take the milling head, move it over here, mount it to a flat piece that's exactly like this, and I'll obviously put, like, you know, drill holes where it need to be drilled and stuff like that for these types of things, you know, because this will be here permanently. So this is like a part of the milling machine, and this will be here permanently. So those I'll drill holes and bolt them, and they'll stay. And then any accessories like vices or whatever will mount to this. So I'm going to have to probably mount it, it'll be a little bit lower than this, but where we're talking about, if you guys look at this, the orientation here, I started here, and let me get a tape measure real fast. Okay, so here's the other major problem here, is that when you start with this cross slide here, okay, this stands, looks like about 8.5 inches off the table. We don't need to be precise with this. And that's where, so when I get my milling machine all the way to the top, which I'll do right now so we can measure. Okay, it's really hard to get it up that high. I don't know what's going on with this thing, but we've got some numbers. So it looks like we can get to about 8 inches of clearance there. You can see that on the gauge there. Right now we're at like 6 7/8 or something, 6 5/8. Anyways, basically where we're at. So you can see, like, after I mount the milling vise on here, like I only have like, maybe 12 inches before I mount this vise. And then, if we're talking about this vise here, this vise is 4 inches tall. So I really lose my height here. So just my base starting, it's 8.5 inches off the table. This one is only 4.5 inches. So I just gained 4 inches of height just by, being able to switch over to this different setup. So, height is a thing, because, you have some tools that, like I've got some big cutters that stick out the bottom like this far. And so now I just lost, 3 inches because my cutter, attached down here. And so, so lots of reasons why I'm doing this. I'll pick this back up after I, get my piece of steel in. I have to order that. So I'll get that ordered, and then I'll get, I'll show you that and the rest of the build. For you, it's just going to be a second, but for me, it'll take a couple weeks. I'll order this, I'll get it in, and but as far as a review of this lathe and lathe mill, what it comes with, like, it comes with great stuff. Comes with a 3-jaw and a 4-jaw chuck. It comes with, it's got great, ease of use. I mean, everything's nice and tight. It's kind of small, but it's on the, it's not as small as some of the lathes I've seen out there. I started with a really old, like a really old, what was it? It was a, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a threading lathe, and it was like an 8x24 or something. So it was super long, big open table. Like, it was awesome, super great lathe. And that's how I learned. And it was belt driven, so didn't have the precise fine controls like this has, and the ease of use and stuff like that. But it was pretty good. So looking at this, we've got our high and low spindle speeds, which you can switch. You have to take this off to switch it. You've got your feed direction. What this doesn't have is it doesn't have cross slide feed, which my old lathe did, and I really missed that feature, and I didn't realize this didn't have it. But you've got your tailstock here, came with a chuck, I believe. I think it did, maybe. No, it came with this chuck. And then it comes with this nice tray, and it comes with, I don't think it comes with anything for the mill, so you get collets, you order collets and stuff like that. It's a very good machine though. So, you've got your, this is your, your low speed. You can adjust, your stuff here, and you can reverse it, which I couldn't do on my old lathe. So now we're reversed. That was something that I couldn't do. Because it was belt driven, it only spun one direction. So there's some things on here that are, really cool features. Some things it needs to have. I'm going to also motorize this thing, because this is horrible. This is a terrible spot for this. It's, it's just horrible. It's the worst. I mean, like I said, I can't even put it all the way up because it's so tight and it just does not ride well. So I don't know why that is exactly. Maybe it needs to be oiled or something, but that raising the mill head up and down is it's terrible. It sucks. It's the worst. So, you've got your mill controls, you can use it like a drill press. This is nice because if you need to just drill a couple holes, you could do that, or you can lock it and get your fine control, which is this. And, your fine control, it didn't hook up here. Now it hooked up. And what's really great is you've got your, dial here, so you can actually see precise fine controls. So the mill is actually really useful, but it's just, having to undo this and mount a vise is why I'm doing the whole thing. So, so in closing this video, we're going to make this part 1 because I'm going to upload it now so that people can start kind of following this and check back. Part 2 will be when I get my piece of steel in and I actually put it together over here. Part 1 is the review of the Grizzly G0769 lathe mill combo. And I think that, this is something a lot of people are going to be like, man, this thing, because when I ordered this machine, I was like, this is, it's brand new. Like, it's got to have all the features. It doesn't have all the features. You find that out after you get it and you start using it. And you're like, oh man, it doesn't do this. It doesn't do that. So in closing, this machine is really great, but it's not a replacement for 2 machines. Like it's, the mill is basically useless. I mean, it will mill, but you have to leave it set up, and that's the biggest problem with this whole thing. So now as it sits, it's not that useful because I'm not going to mill if I've got to take that stupid thing apart and mount a vise on there and then true the vise up and make sure it's right, and then and then have the mill bind up and everything because it's on a teeter-totter right here, this thing, and it's just these little, I mean, it's just horrible. So I don't mill with it. I have, in the past, but like only if I'm going to do a lot of milling will I switch it over. Otherwise, it's not worth it. The lathe works amazing. Really good lathe setup. The tool post is okay. I should upgrade that. But, as far as it is, like, you can use it like this. You can turn lots of stuff on the lathe, which I've done. I did, stuff like this. I turned it stuff as big as this 4-inch piece of aluminum. I did that on here. I'm going to make an ice ball press out of this. I got 2 pieces like that. So, you have those things that you can do. These jaws are interchangeable. You can do 3, internal or external jaws. So you obviously don't use these jaws. You switch them for the other jaws that flip around and have the, they're reversed. It comes with a 3-jaw and a 4-jaw chuck. That stuff's pretty good. Changing the chuck out is not very easy. They didn't give you all the things for, like all the bolts you need. So you kind of have to come up with the bolts for it. So that's kind of a, Grizzly dropped the ball on that one. But, all in all, this is a great machine for, it has lots of uses, but it's just not very convenient. Like, they really didn't, I mean, it's well made, but it's not very well thought out. So, if they had a quick disconnect, some kind of thing here that you didn't have to disassemble the whole tool post and everything to set it up to mill things, that would be awesome. Like, maybe they could have added another carriage where, you roll this carriage all the way to here or something, and the mill is up on the end, and then you can roll, because this would be easy. If you could, like, taking this on and off, you can take this on and off easy. So maybe you have another one that comes here. I don't know, but they just didn't do a very good job with this one. So, so that's my review. I know it's not, as like some of you guys do on YouTube. They're way better at this than I am, but I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this just to help people with, stuff. So you've got all your threading gears that they send you, which I don't know how to thread yet, but I'll learn. And so, as far as like a review of this thing, it's a great machine, but doesn't have cross slide feed. And using the mill is like, you got to commit to it because you got to take the stupid thing apart. And how this connects right here, this thing right here is the stupidest thing in the whole world. And I'm not going to take it apart and show you, but just trust me, it's a horrible design. So, they should have, maybe run the T-slots all the way through and just had this thing connect with T-slots. That would have been a great idea. There's other things they could have done. I mean, this is, if the T-slots ran all the way through and this thing connected with T-slots, that would be a no-brainer. It would be easy, super easy to switch over. And it didn't come with a milling vise either. It should have come with like a 2-inch or a 3-inch one that you could just pop on there. That would have been great. And I don't know, maybe they have an idea that you can put a milling vise on the back of here. You turn this thing sideways and then you can mill, but then you lose half of your, if you can't set up the milling vise in the center here, you lose half of your movement. So that's another thing. Like, So it's just, there's a lot of things that I have a problem with, and maybe, you know, maybe they just didn't explain it to me well enough, but that's my review of this machine. I like it. I think it's easy to use. I think it's convenient. It's small, you know, but it handles lots of bigger things. You know, the spindle is you know, it's all the way through, so you can turn really long things in here as long as the diameter isn't bigger than this, which I think is like an inch or something. So you can actually go, you know, go through there and turn something long in here. But as far as, you know, where we're at on this machine, you know, this is a machine that is great for somebody doing hobby work. It's great for, you know, it's if somebody wanted to, you know, the option to mill, but like, it's like, you know, this was like $2,500. I could have bought for like $3,000. I could have bought a lathe and a mill, you know, and so separate machines. And I should have done that because this is, having to do this is terrible, but I'm not going to go out and buy a milling machine when I've got one right here that I can set up for a few $100 and have it, you know, have it in a very, this is still a pretty convenient small package, especially if I move or something. I can just roll this thing onto a trailer now that it's on, you know, this big table. So now it's going to be set up like this. You know, it'll be all one thing, but so that's that. I just wanted to, you know, jump on here, and obviously this isn't jet boat related, except for the fact that I do all kinds of parts for my boats and stuff on the lathe and the mill. And so for that reason, you know, I did, you know, for my mini jet boat, I turned the handle down, you know, for the reverse. I'm just looking at it over here. I made a custom piece for the trim, which you'll see in that video. I made, you know, turn the handle down on 1-inch stainless steel. I had to bring it down to like 7/8 so the throttle would fit over it. And I've made lots of other parts. I mean, turned all kinds of you know, bolts for the hull. I put those in the lathe and took the sharp edges off of them so I could bolt them to the underside, and they'd stick out, but they wouldn't catch water and everything and be like sharp edges. So there's all kinds of uses for a lathe and a mill. But you know, if you know, it takes you, I mean, the whole thing is convenient. So if it takes you, you know, 30 minutes to tear down your tool post and put a milling vise on there, and then you know, another 30 minutes to put it back, now like there's an hour you could have been building stuff and you weren't. So that's really my, you know, review of this thing. That's why I wanted to do it. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing with my mill, my lathe mill combo, the Grizzly G0769. And I'm going to show you what I do with it. Maybe it's going to help some of you guys who bought this machine not realizing that it wasn't as useful as it was. And if somebody out there watches this and sees that I'm doing something wrong, put it in the comments. I don't mind being wrong, as long as I've got a solution, totally good. This is what I could come up with. But if there's a different way to use this machine that's way more convenient than I am, put it in the comments. I would love to learn from you. I'm not a master lathe, you know, I don't even know what you call it, but I'm not a master at the lathe. I'm not a master at the mill. I've just learned in the past few years. I know there's a ton to learn. It's crazy. So if somebody watches this that is a master, you know, comment on there and say, hey, here's how you're supposed to use that thing, and here's what would be much easier or whatever. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to building this thing. So I'm going to go order my piece of steel, and then I'll put part 2 out when I get the rest of the parts for this thing and finish building it. So thanks for watching. If you like this, I'm going to do more stuff like this, you know, jet boats, of course, but you know, the tools and the things that come along with it are part of the build. So, you know, if you like this thing, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and you know, share it with anybody else that you think might like it or might benefit from it. Because really, you know, I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this to, you know, help people through the things that I come up with, and the things that I think are a struggle. So that's partially why, I mean, it's, you know, honestly, I've benefited so much from YouTube and so from all of you guys that took the time to shoot videos and explain things and stuff like that. And I didn't pay you to do it. So my contribution is coming up with, you know, adding my own content, my own information, so that you guys can benefit from the stuff that I'm doing as well, just like me. I think that's only fair that I put the stuff out there as well and start contributing. So so that's where we're at today. Review of the Grizzly G0769, and we're gonna make this thing way better. We're gonna modify it, and it's gonna turn out to be something pretty special, I think, and it'll make it very easy to use and very convenient. So check back for part 2, and let me know what you think in the comments.